Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Christian Barnes, and I am the founder and lead financial coach of Do Better Financial. And thank you for joining me for Weeconomy Wednesday. We are back at it. And as evidenced by the title, we are going to be going over more stimulus package information. So as you well know, this bill is pretty fresh. It's fresh as far as legislation goes. It was presented at the end of last month, March 27th. And because of that, things are constantly changing. So please refer anything that I've mentioned in this video or in the past. I actually did a full walkthrough of Part 3 of the CARES Act, or the Coronavirus Response Bill, a couple of weeks ago. So anything that was in those videos is possible to be outdated. By the time I finish talking, some of this stuff may be outdated. So please refer to the appropriate agency for the most recent information. So if you're looking for stuff for student loans, you're definitely going to go to the federal student loan website. If you're looking for something as far as the SBA, you go to the SBA website. That's the Small Business Association, so on and so forth, right? You want something about the IRS, you go to irs.gov. So one example of how things are readily changing is the EIDL program, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. I know, they love their acronyms. We're going to be covering the changes that have been made to that program. And in addition, we're going to be walking through some of the most recent developments around taxes, economic impact payments or stimulus payments, and also just talking about some of the options for the next stimulus package, which will be Part 4. And last but not least, why unemployment is such a pain in the you-know-what. And that part is going to be specific to Texas. So in honor of what today normally is, today is April 15th, and we would normally be filing our taxes in the United States today. We're going to start with taxes. So the big change that I'm sure most of you know is that individual taxes are now due on July 15th. So you have a 3-month, I definitely was trying to do a bromance from a fifth floor, a 3-month period extension on when you have to file your individual taxes. Now, as I discussed in my video about economic stimulus payments a couple of weeks ago, it would have been the first video in that five-day series. You may want to go ahead and file anyway, or at least get them ready. There's no need for you to be completely shocked and surprised at what you still owe for 2019. Go ahead and know what the damage is so that you can figure out what you need to do going forward. In addition to individual taxes being due on July 15th, business quarterly tax payments are normally due June 15th, and they are now also due July 15th. And Americans who live and work abroad also have the extension until July 15th. So everyone's taxes are now due on the same date. That probably simplifies some things and complicates some others. But like I said, if you are an individual who expects to receive particularly if you expect to receive an economic stimulus payment or a refund, go ahead and file those taxes. But go ahead and get them ready even if you don't expect to get anything back, all right? So as far as the extension, there will be no interest charge, no late filing penalties or anything like that. The official new due date is July 15th. So you don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to charge you if you owe. They're not going to charge you as long as you file by July 15th. But come July 15th, if you owe, your taxes are due in full unless you set up a payment plan with the IRS, right? This new deadline also includes people who haven't filed for 2016 and who want to claim a refund. So this is something that I just never really knew. I always have filed my taxes pretty regularly, but obviously a lot of people get behind. So there's a 3-year period after the tax filing year. So 2016 taxes were supposed to be filed in 2017. So you have from 2017, 18, 19, 20 to claim a refund from the Treasury. If you don't, then the Treasury gets to keep that money. So if you should have filed taxes in 2017 for 2016 and you haven't yet, your deadline is July 15th as well. Most states, if you live in a state that has state taxes, the state of Texas does not. State of Texas does sales tax instead. But if you live in a state that has state taxes, most of them have extended their filing deadlines as well. There's a link in the description that'll tell you exactly what your state has done. But by and large, most states have extended those deadlines. So that pretty much wraps up taxes. Everybody's stuff is due July 15th. Go ahead and get ready, but it's not due until then. Next, and the part that I'm sure most of you are most excited about, is the economic impact payments, otherwise as stimulus payments. When will I get my money? Good news, a lot of people have already gotten their money. They started doing those direct deposits on April 11th, and they're expected to take somewhere around 2 to 3 weeks. There are some optimistic estimates that say that it's going to take between 5 and 7 days. So I, for one, am very surprised and happily surprised that they were able to get their act together this quickly. I did not expect that it would happen anywhere near this fast. A lot of people are like, oh man, this is so much faster when they did it in 2008. It should be. That was 12 years ago. But neither here nor there. They're doing it much faster than expected. So if you've already gotten yours, great. If you haven't gotten yours yet, the expectation is that people who filed their taxes for 2019 or 2018 electronically and got a refund, and therefore the government already had your information, will get their money by today. That's what they said. Dunno. That's what they said. The other expectation is that shortly after that, so if you're a person who receives Social Security, SSDI, Social Security and disability benefits, then you should, and you don't normally file taxes, you should receive your payment shortly after those other people. So the idea is that all the initial direct deposits are supposed to be done, like I said, optimistic 5 to 7 days, more realistic 2 to 3 weeks, depending on exactly, what kind of hiccups they catch, right? If you have not given them your electronic information, or if they just don't have it for whatever reason, paper checks will start getting to people around May 1st. Now, I'm sure you've seen this stuff online about the fact that the president wanted to have his name printed in the memo line and that was going to slow the checks down. After some research, it looks like it may or may not slow the checks down. They did have to figure it out, but they've actually been planning for it for a couple of weeks. While it honestly makes no difference to the checks and to anybody who's receiving them, honestly, it seriously makes a difference to him. Think of that what you will. It doesn't seem like it's going to slow down the paper checks any more than they were already going to be slowed down. That said, paper checks will go out in what they call reverse AGI order. AGI is adjusted gross income. So when you file your taxes, that number that you get at the end, they frequently ask you for on anything that you're filing later, is going to be, the amount of income you made that they're going to charge you taxes for. So that's after they've deducted how much you put into your 401k, and after they deduct, I'm trying to think, anything you put into your health savings accounts, stuff like that. After they deduct all that, after they deduct how much, you donate if you itemize taxes, things like that. After they deduct all that, that's your adjusted gross income. So it's typically going to be less than what you normally make. The question is by how much, right? So they're going to be issued in reverse AGI order. It's going to start, the first checks will go out to people who make less than $10,000, okay? Which is something I honestly can't fathom, but I know there are people out there who are dealing with that situation. So they would start with those people, and then the progression would continue over the next few months, to be quite honest. And so the last group of people who would have eligibility would be married couples who make $198,000 or $198,000. That's the cap, right? That's the top, the tippity top. Those would be the last people to get paid. And the current estimate is that those people, if they're getting paper checks, would not get them until September. Okay, so obviously that's a very long time from now. The idea is that those people would be the ones who need it the least, so they're going to get their checks last. It's pretty simple, but that's just FYI. So what if you don't normally file taxes? Good question. They have created what they call an IRS Non-Filers Tool. And basically what that tool does is it's going to allow you to put in your direct deposit information into the IRS system without having to file a full return. It makes you file what they call a minimal return. So who can use this thing? It's going to be single filers if you make less than $12,200 a year, or if you're married filing jointly and making less than $24,400 in 2019. So again, I've actually had some questions come through, so I just want to point this out if anybody's curious. If you have any overdue child support, you will not get this check. It will go to whoever you have overdue child support to. It's the only people who will not get a check after meeting these requirements. From what I've seen so far, I did get a question about this privately. If you know somebody who has recently been released from prison, they should qualify for this program. Assuming they were in there for the entire year of 2019, they would qualify to go ahead and go onto the Non-Filers website and utilize that, because even though they technically get paid while they work in prison, is low-key slave labor, and they paid them like 10 cents an hour. So they ain't make $12,200 last year, and that would be the way they would file, and they should receive the money as long as they don't owe back child support, right? The money will not be used to pay outstanding tax debts or outstanding student loans, anything like that, right? People who have supplemental security income, so not Social Security, but supplemental security, you will know if you have this. If you have Social Security, or you always thought it's Social Security, that's what it is. If you have supplemental security income, veterans disability compensation or pension, or survivor benefits from the VA, and you did not file in 2018 or 2019, you can use this. If you have Social Security, disability, or railroad retirement, you can use this site to claim dependents. Okay, I know I said a lot. So single, married, making less than 12.2, married jointly, making less than 24.4. If you get SSI, veterans disability comp or pension, and survivor benefits and didn't file, you can use it. If you get Social Security, disability, or railroad retirement, you can claim your kids on it. You're going to get your 12 automatically, okay? So how does this website work? Well, the website is, like I said earlier, irs.gov. You're going to click on there's a link there that I think it says like get coronavirus stimulus payment information, and there's going to be a link down there that says Non-Filers Tool. You're going to create an account. They're going to ask you to do username, email, and password. Give them your full name, Social Security number, date of birth, driver's license or state ID if you have it. If you don't, I believe you can skip this. And then they're going to ask you for account and writing number. They're also going to ask you for dependents. If you have any, you need to have their Social Security number. They can't have been claimed by anybody else. I know that that's probably going to end up being an issue. I've seen some kind of sketchy stuff that's been going on with people who have been filing through kind of some of those mom and pop shops and doing things that maybe were not completely legal, right? So they can't have been claimed by anybody else. And also, so you need their Social Security number or an adoption tax ID number, right? So if you've adopted them, they would have an adoption tax ID number, and you need to list what their relation is to you or your spouse. If you have an IP PIN, an identity protection personal identification number that you received from the IRS earlier this year, they're going to ask you for that. Those usually come in the mail. If you've lost yours, I am so sorry. You are not going to be able to use this more than likely. I have another client who had this issue. They needed to use their PIN. They could not find it, and they're going to have to mail in their tax returns because they need that PIN in order to file online because they had an identity theft issue in the past, right? So if you have an IP PIN and you've lost it, you're gonna have to file manually. You're gonna have to write it out and stick it in the mail, and it's gonna take a while. Or you could just, hold out until they open up that part of the government again, and then you'd be able to contact the group that handles that particular work. When you open it, when you finish, it's gonna say this is a minimal return. You might be thinking, oh, I'm filing a tax return. I don't normally file a tax return. Am I gonna owe taxes? No, you do not. This is strictly so that they can give you a direct deposit of your payment, okay? So that's for non-filers. How do you know when your payment is coming? Great question. That same website I just mentioned, there is a button that says Get My Refund. They launched this website and it opened today. It will show you the status of your payment if it's already been scheduled. If it's already been scheduled, it's going to show you the status, how it's going to be sent, the date it will be sent or deposited if it's already been scheduled, right? I said that backwards and forward. So if it's already been scheduled, it's going to show you the status of the payment, how it's going to be sent, and the date it will be sent or deposited. If you owed money when you filed, which is where my husband and I are, there's another feature of Get My Refund that will allow you to input your direct deposit information, and it works. I did it this morning. You're going to go in there, and very similar to the Non-Filers Tool, you're going to give them. Now, this one's a little bit different. So you have to give them a mailing address because this is how they're going to identify you and match you up, right, with your submitted return. So what you need to do is you have to make sure you have the appropriate mailing address. your mailing address is going to be, sorry, I'm getting upcoming information right now. Yes. So thank you, Christina. I wanted to make sure I answered this question. So if this is how you're going to update this information, Christina, if you have changed your bank account or anything like that, when you go in there, you're going to give them your current the mailing address you put on your last filed return. This one was tricky for me because we moved a couple of times, so I used a different address than where I live for my mailing address. You need to make sure you know what that is. If you don't remember, go look at your last return. Social security number, date of birth. You're gonna need your AGI. I mentioned it earlier, your adjusted gross income, what you either got refunded or what you had to pay. That's one more thing. So this is all just to make sure that you are who you say you are. If you are, you should have this information. You probably filed it really recently. And then the last thing you're going to put in is your routing and account numbers. If you want to update those numbers, that routing and account number, as long as your payment hasn't already been scheduled, you should be able to do that on this website. If you had a payment scheduled already, like if you go in there and you click Get My Refund and they show that it's already been scheduled, you're not going to be able to change your information, unfortunately. I have not seen any information on what the recourse is to go about retrieving funds that were not deposited in the right place. If that account is closed, I presume they just won't get deposited, and then you're going to have to go back around a second try with the IRS in some manner. Not sure what that's going to look like. But as soon as I find out, I will let y'all know, because this is going to take a while, okay? All right, so that pretty much wraps up our payments. They've got the Non-Filers Tool. If you meet those requirements, they also have the Get My Refund tool. Remember, this thing not only just launched today, everyone in America wants to know where their refund is, okay? So that said, it could take a little bit. When I first clicked to try to open the website, it said, we have a lot of traffic. It did not crash. It said, we have a lot of traffic. We will connect you to the website as soon as there is space available. And so I literally went and used the bathroom. And when I came back, it was connected. So, you just gotta wait sometimes, okay? Next part we're gonna talk about is unemployment, and that is specific to Texas. The first question is, why is this so painful? My husband has been furloughed, as I told you guys last week. And so I do understand some of the pain associated with the unemployment filing. By the grace of God, when he filed, it happened to be a period of time where there seemed not to be quite as many people online. So he only got kicked off once. I know some of you haven't been able to file yet. But here's why it's so bad, okay? Typically, TWC, the Texas Workforce Commission, processes about 14,000 applications a week. During Hurricane Harvey, just for perspective, they processed about 63,000 a week. But those went over, a couple of weeks. It wasn't what we've got going on now. In the last 4 weeks, TWC has processed 760,000 applications. And as of the last numbers I saw, that has gone to over 1 million within 5 weeks, okay? That's why this is so crazy. That's why you can't get through on the phone. That's why the website keeps crashing. Besides the fact that there were literally hundreds of thousands of people trying to do exactly what you were trying to do, there were also issues with their system itself. It is old. Like, they still run on mainframe computers. Old, okay? For those of my techies, that's some real old stuff. There are very few things that run on mainframes other than the government and maybe some school districts, okay? So, is there any hope in sight? Yes. They have extended their call center hours to 7 to 7, and as of early this week, they are open 7 days a week. They've gone from 5 days a week from 8 to 6 to now 7 days a week from 7 to 7. There are multiple call centers all around the state, and so when you call, they put you with the next available person. Even if you're in Austin, that next available person might be in El Paso, which is technically a different time zone, but they work 7 to 7 Central Standard Time because that's most of the state, right? FYI. So if you're trying to apply and you're online, it's best to try late at night or early in the morning. So like when my husband was able to do it, he was on there probably around the 10 p.m. range, and he finally was able to get through. I've also seen some information saying that people who apply very early in the morning, so between 6 and 8 a.m., are able to get through. So try one of those time periods. That's going to be your best bet. If you're trying to call, there is in the linked in the description below, there is a list of the hours that they want you to call based on your area code and the days of the week. If you follow this guidance, there's still not a guarantee that you're going to get answered quickly, but you're more likely to get a response, and more people are actually going to be able to get helped, okay? So what have they done to try to fix this other than extending their hours? They have shifted 415 employees to the unemployment insurance office. So normally they have a lot of other things going on. They have redirected 450 of their current employees. They've also hired 100 new people at their call centers. There are still jobs available. So if you live in San Antonio, McAllen, Fort Worth, or El Paso, you should definitely look into it. There are also some work from home jobs. Some of them you have to be local. They are also hiring call centers. So they actually just hired Accenture, which I know for some people who work for Accenture that, you know, they were huge hiring when I was at Texas A&M. There are going to be some very overqualified people answering your questions very shortly about unemployment insurance, but this allows them to continue working and not to be completely furloughed, which is probably really good for them. And it also allows people who are unemployed to get the help that they need via these phone lines. If you have submitted an application online and you got an email saying that it went through, calling them is not going to do much else, right? You kind of just have to wait. Keep an eye on your email. My husband finally got an email telling him to go ahead and submit request for payment. The way that this works is that the way that this normally would work in a not pandemic is that every 2 weeks you would go in and request payment based on the fact that you have not been able to find work, right? So that process is still in place. So every 2 weeks you would have to go in and request payment. My husband got that first request yesterday. We're going to see how it goes. We have no idea. They never told us we were approved. We didn't get an email saying approved or anything like that. They just said request payment. So I'm praying that that means he's approved and we can go on with our lives. But just know that you're going to have to go on there and request payment every 2 weeks as it currently stands. But if you've gotten an email if you got an email saying that you need to call them, you do need to call them, but go and look at that list of area codes and figure out what time you need to call them. And, you know, be prepared to wait. Put it on speakerphone and put on your headphones and do something else, wash the dishes, take care of the kids, you know, go to a meeting and then mute it if they finally pick it up, whatever you need to do, so that you can get through the process. It's going to take a while. They will eventually begin to clear the backlog as they bring on more of these call centers. Like they said, they have Accenture coming in to help. They have a couple of AT&T centers coming in to help. But it's going to take a minute, okay? If you are self-employed, the system should now accept your application. I know previously the system was not prepared to accept those applications because that is a change to the overall way that unemployment works. But it should accept your application. Even if it says you're denied for state benefits, you will still be able for federal benefits, but somebody's going to have to go in and manually do that, so it could take a little bit longer. If you were originally denied for unemployment, but you qualify under the CARES Act, you can either go and appeal or apply again. That's going to depend on what your login on the TWC website says. Don't apply again if it still shows that you're pending or something like that. Only apply again if it's been denied and it says it's closed or something like that, okay? When will they start making these CARES Act payments of $600 a week? So I saw a little bit of confusion about this. The $600 a week is a federal unemployment payment, but it will be made by state unemployment agencies. So the TWC, if you live in the state of Texas, will be sending you that $600. I have not seen yet whether they will include it in your normal payment or whether it will come as like two separate payments, but it has to come within the same week. That's part of the legislation. But they will be making those payments. So if you don't qualify for normal Texas unemployment, but you do qualify under the CARES Act, you still apply on the TWC website and they will update it. I can't remember the exact title I think it's like FUA or something, like federal unemployment aid. I believe it's FUA is how you would qualify. They're still going to be the ones sending your payments. So there's no secondary place to apply. It's all on TWC. They're supposed to begin making those extra payments this week. Again, I have not heard if those have actually begun to flow to people. I know some other states have said that they've started doing, like New York and California, and I believe the last one I saw was New Mexico. There are some others, I'm sure. Those are just the ones that pop up when I Google this, because I Google this literally every day, okay? So, again, if you need to apply for unemployment, best time to try to get online is between 10 and 8 a.m. If you need to call, make sure you use those area code lists. And if you've already applied or you were ineligible before, you can either appeal or reapply right now. It should accept you. They are working through the backlog. There's also a link below to an interview with one of the leaders of the TWC. I honestly can't remember his name or what he did, but he gave a whole lot of information on exactly how they're going about expanding their ability to handle the level of calls that they're getting. The amount of calls, I think he said they got one day was like 1.7 million calls in one day. Obviously, a lot of that was callbacks and things like that, but still people trying to get in and getting busy signals, and so they're just continuously calling and having trouble getting through. They're working on it. I know it sucks. Keep pushing through. I want to reiterate this. This is really important. Even if you've been unemployed for a couple weeks and haven't been able to apply yet, your benefits will be retroactive. So if you get on there and you put in that you were originally laid off at the end of March, when your benefits kick in, they will compensate you from the end of March, if that makes sense. So you don't have to worry about missing out on 2 weeks of benefits necessarily. They will get you the money. It's obviously been delayed, okay? Now, this is the bigger one. So everybody, get comfortable again. Lots of acronyms. We're going to start talking about business. So if you're a business owner, or if you know a small business owner, this is your spot. Go call your friends, go tap them, send them a link. This is the time to jump on. Are people getting approved for the PPP loan? Now, a couple weeks ago, the PPP loan was day 5, and I waited till day 5 because it was so confusing and there was so much involved, and I wanted to make sure I didn't give you bad information. That is the Paycheck Protection Plan loan. As of yesterday, about 60% of the available funds, which is originally $350 billion, has been approved for disbursement, which is great. That means that people's loans have been approved. The SBA, the Small Business Association, has approved the loans that have been taken through banks, and the banks now have the responsibility to disperse the funds. How long does disbursement take? I wish I could tell you. There just isn't much data available yet, unfortunately. It seems like smaller banking institutions, so local banks, are having better ability to turn around the loans and actually lend out the funds quickly. Some only took a couple of days. Larger banks are struggling with this. So can you still get one? If you've been approved, will you get your money? You will get your money eventually. Here's the issue. A lot of other larger banks have stopped accepting applications, number one. So if you haven't applied already, a large bank's probably not going to take your application, but there are some other options. The reason that they've stopped accepting applications, and also that they're not distributing funds, is because there is so much murkiness around this legislation. I'm going to give you a quote from a banker. They are concerned. This is a banking association, and there's a link in the description from where this came from. They are concerned that the lack of details of what exactly borrowers have to do to get their loans forgiven, and what banks have to do to get their guarantees fulfilled by the SBA. Let me translate that for you. The banks are concerned that they don't know what small business owners need to do to have these loans forgiven. That concerns me, okay? Because in my video, I explicitly told you to talk to your banker, and what I'm learning is your banker don't know either. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. What they're looking for is what's called a promissory note. It would basically tell them, like I said, the details of how people can get their loans forgiven, and it would also give them assurance that if the loans were outstanding, or if people ended up not paying when they do end up owing at the end, that the SBA would cover those loans, and the banks wouldn't end up holding a bunch of bad loans. There's also concerns about the fact that the process doesn't have nearly as much rigor in figuring out if people are eligible, or what their eligibility is, things like that. So if you have put in for a loan and it says approved, you will get the funds. The question is when. If you haven't applied yet, big banks probably aren't going to take your application, but there have been some new companies that have been approved, like fintech companies, which is financial tech companies, like Square, PayPal, and QuickBooks. They're now eligible lenders. They might be better able to assist you because they're accustomed to doing everything online and not being able to see people in person doing things quickly. And so they should be better able to handle a large influx of applications, right? Here's the only thing. The funds will run out at some point. I have no idea when. There were people saying that they were going to run out as of today. There are people saying that they'll run out at the end of this week. There are people saying that they'll run out whenever, right? It was $350 billion. Like I said, at the end of yesterday, they had assigned, right? They had approved about 60% of that. The thought is by the end of today or tomorrow, they'll be at 80%. If you're in line and you're under the threshold, you should get your money. If you're not in line yet, it's going to be iffy, but there could be some more funding from bills in the future, okay? So should you apply for this loan if you don't already have one in the works? The lack of clarity makes me very uneasy. If you're going to do this, be prepared to owe something when this is all said and done. Because in reality, the forgiveness is just fuzzy, okay? It's fuzzy. There's no clarity around it. The banks don't even understand it. And that alone, I would not do it. I would be more inclined to gracefully bow out and start to figure out how I can transition my business to something that works in this environment, if at all possible. I would tell my employees I'm so sorry, and I would send them to get in line with the other people in unemployment, because it's better to go ahead and get in line than to just drag people along and not have them know whether or not they're going to get their next paycheck, okay? That is my feeling. I feel even stronger than that about nonprofits, particularly churches, when it comes to this loan. I'm going to say this: the borrower is slave to the lender. And the last person the church needs to be slave to is the government. Okay? You want to be able to choose to submit and not be contractually obligated to submit. I'm going to leave it right there. You can think what you like. I think it's a bad idea to take on debt when you're already in an emergency. And right now, even though they say it can turn into a grant and be forgiven, it's looking a lot like you may not be able to do that, simply because they haven't given us any defined information around it. And that alone is concerning. So if you've already applied, before you sign that dotted line, get as much information as you possibly can on exactly what this loan entails, okay? Next question. I've heard a lot about this $10,000 advance. What is that? Great question. Thank you for asking. That is the other loan that we did not discuss in that video. So this is new information alert, ding, ding, ding. Those are called economic impact disaster loans. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning of this video. The EIDL program is designed to help businesses cover operating expenses during a crisis. So some businesses may have gotten them during Harvey. Some of them, especially around the Gulf Coast, got them during some of the BP oil spills, things like that, right? So this is not a new program. It has simply been expanded to include some people that it didn't include previously. And there are a lot of new nuances in this current period in time because of the economic difficulties being experienced by so many people over the entire United States instead of just one small area. So you can use it, like I said, to cover operating expenses. So things like payroll, building rent, things like that. You cannot use it to refinance debt, to make payments on other federal debt, to repair physical damages, or to pay tax debts, penalties, or pay dividend payments. So those are the things you cannot use it for. It can be used for pretty much anything else, but definitely go to the SBA website to get details on exactly what it can be used to cover. Who can get one? Very similar to PPP, small businesses with 500 employees or less, nonprofits, tribal businesses, cooperatives, employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs, sole proprietors and independent contractors, or 1099 gig workers, right? You cannot get one if you participate in illegal activities. I'm pretty sure what they're referring to for the most part is prostitution and dispensaries, because they're federally illegal, okay? And gambling. All right. You have to have been, last thing, you have to have been in business since January 31st of 2020. So if your business opened sometime in February or March, you would not be eligible for this program. What are the terms? So for for-profit businesses, your interest rate is going to be 3.75%. For nonprofits, it's going to be 2.75%, and you can get up to a 30-year term. When I say up to, that means that you can opt for a shorter one. That just means you have to pay off whatever it is that you take out sooner. They have some varying amounts of requirements for how you can qualify for certain amounts of loans. I think you can get $25,000, up to $25,000 with no security, no personal security. Like you don't have to have any collateral. That's the word I wanted. You don't have to have any collateral. And then there are levels. You can get all the way up to a full loan value of $2 million, and you can get up to $10,000 as an advance. Now, due to high demand, the SBA has limited disbursements to $15,000 per business for the next couple of months. What does that mean? Let's say you are approved for a $200,000 loan. For the next few months, the most that they would disperse, so you're approved, it's your loan, but the most that they're actually going to give you and deposit into your bank account is $15,000 for a couple of months while they, I guess, negotiate more funding from the federal government, something like that. It's unclear as to exactly how long they intend for that to last, but that's the rule right now, okay? So you get an automatic deferral of payments for up to 1 year, but interest interest accrues from the point of disbursement. So if they disperse some of your loan, that first $15,000 in March, you're going to start accruing interest on that, even though you don't owe a payment until next March. Make sense? You are eligible for the advance by applying. All you have to do is apply, and you can receive it and keep it whether you're approved or not. The advance does not have to be repaid whether you're approved or not. So this one seems to actually be a grant. Of course, there is a catch. The amount, so that advance, it says $10,000. It's up to $10,000. How do they figure out what you get? It's based on head count. So if you're a sole prop and you're your only employee, the most you could get was $1,000. If it's you and your wife, the most you could get is $2,000. If it's you, your wife, and your brother, you get the idea, right? So that's how they decide how much your advance can be. Your forgivable advance is determined by head count, like I said. It will be deducted from your eligible loan forgiveness for the PPP loan if you also have that. What? Okay. So, if you get a PPP loan, right? And let's say your PPP loan is $30,000. I'm making up a number, okay? Let's say it's $30,000. That's how much you were eligible for. But you also got $3,000 as a forgivable advance on your EIDL. That would be deducted from the amount that you could have forgiven on your PPP. So the most you could have forgiven from your PPP loan would be $27,000. That 30 minus the 3 that was your advance from the EIDL. I know it was a lot, but if you need to hear it again, just rewind it and replay it as much as you need to, and there are links in the description below to give you some more details on this. Just know that if you already have that advance, that is how this is going to work, okay? The other thing about this is you do have the option to refinance your EIDL with your PPP loan. Technically, realistically, they haven't issued any guidance as to how that works. You detecting a pattern here? All right, so get the money. If you were getting an advance, the idea of this advance was literally supposed to be emergency money. So it was supposed to go out within 3 days of your application. That seems to not be happening, right? The SBA is struggling with demand. They're struggling with getting through all of the loan applications, and people are not getting their money as quickly as they were supposed to. I haven't seen any accurate numbers as to how long it's actually taking people to get the emergency advance, but it's not 3 days, okay? So expect more than 3 days, for sure. Maybe 7, maybe 2 weeks. The full loan amount would take 2 to 3 weeks to be processed, and then another week to be disbursed. But right now, they're only dispersing $15,000 per business, no matter how much you've been approved for. I hope that all made sense. I tried to make it make sense to me, and hopefully that translated to you. There are a couple of other things that are available through the SBA. They have SBA Loan Forbearance. So if you are a 7A borrower, meaning you have a microloan, a 504 loan, or any other existing disaster loan, you do not have to pay principal or interest payments on loans in regular servicing status for the 6-month period beginning March 27th. The SBA is going to make payments on your behalf. That's pretty cool. So if you have an existing loan for the next 6 months, the SBA is going to make your payments. So your loan balance will continue to go down. You're not going to accrue any extra interest. They're going to make those payments for you. If you got an EIDL under this current disaster, those payments will be deferred through December 31st of 2020 at least. It says a year. So again, get clarity when you apply about whether or not that is just the year 2020 or a year from when you actually get your loan, because those two things contradict what I just said. But it's the magic of having new legislation, okay? So is there anywhere else that you can get help? Yes, there are some places. So if you live in Harris County, you can start by dialing 211. If you're a person who's in need of help with your business, if you're a person who's looking for access to testing or food and utility assistance, domestic violence and suicide hotlines and more, you can either dial 211 or you can go to readyharris.org. Both of those places are going to have all sorts of awesome information available for you and links to the different websites where you can find said information. That link is in the description below as well. If you're looking for general information, this is my PSA. If you're looking for general information about COVID-19, about what's happening with the state of Texas, about what's happening with the federal government, about what's happening with anything, stick with reliable sources, I beg of you. Not social media. Even when it comes to me, I am giving you the best information that I possibly can, but I am also giving you links in the description below because stuff changes, okay? I constantly think things pop up on social media that haven't been accurate for a week because they're just coming across somebody's timeline, but they're not fact checking it. They just repost it. They just reshare it, right? Every city, county, state, they all have websites which have more updated information than pretty much anything you're going to be able to get a hold of on social media, unless you're following people who are following those things, right? I definitely have some friends who are on top of it. They're sending out stuff the second it's shared on some reliable source, but verify. Always start there when you're verifying any information you see running around Facebook. I saw some stuff where people were talking about, oh, they about to open up the country on May 1st and all of this. And I'm like, I'm going to read this whole thing. And while it does say that they're planning to start the process of opening on May 1st, the process is long and drawn out. And based on what they have mapped out, it could take another month after they start. Nonetheless, all I want to say is make sure you research any information that you get, any tidbit, especially if it's, sensational or seems unbelievable. When I saw that people were getting their payments, I thought that was unbelievable. So I went and checked, okay? I started looking. My first thought was, let me see if this is true. How many responsible and reliable news outlets have also said this is true, right? I am now a fact checker. I need you to join me in this fact checking mission to stop sending out trash across social media. Off my soapbox. Last thing, there is a round 4 of coronavirus legislation on deck. There is no current ETA on passage, but here are some things that might be included. I'm telling you this so that when people talk about them, you can know, oh, Christian said that might be in there. Let me go see if they decided it is. Remember, there is no ETA on passage. Currently, Congress is not scheduled to go back to Washington until May 4th. That's not saying they can't pass stuff without being there, but politics. You can read up on it if you're really interested, but basically, they can pass stuff, but everybody has to agree to it, and politics. Okay, so what's on deck for round 4? More funding for PPP. That is actually the first thing that's on the list, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first thing that passes when they're able to get an agreement, as long as they keep it to just the money. There have been some discussions about trying to include some more legislation about which businesses can get the money. There have been some concerns that like small businesses, and I mean like, you know, your mom and pop shops, your tiny bakeries, your hair salons, those people haven't had access to funds, because larger small businesses who have more like that 500 employee level, or who are part of something like a franchise, right? So I was reading about like Jimmy John's, right? Those locations are all considered small businesses because they're franchise, but they obviously have a larger arm. So they have an army of people who are like accountants and lawyers that can help them with the process of getting those loans. So those guys may have been at the front of the line as a group, crowding out some of the, you know, smaller independent business owners. So there was some talk of including legislation that would focus on funneling funds to those people first, but that's obviously a change from the legislation that was already existing. So that means that they have to go back to arguing. If they just stick to the money part, they'll probably get the 250 mil extra passed. When? Don't know. There's possibly another round of stimulus checks in the works. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has talked about wanting to do some more of those. There have actually been some way grander ideas that people want to include, like regular payments to Americans. I have serious doubts that will fly, but we'll see. Keep your eyes open. More funding for hospitals. This one is a must, and I honestly don't understand why this one hasn't gone through yet, but that one's going to have to happen. And increased access to internet. This one was really interesting to me. So having the ability for more people who are in rural areas to access internet more easily. There's also some talk, you should definitely keep your eyes open if you are a parent, about schools being closed for the rest of the year. I assumed that would be the case, but they're finally starting to come out and say that that's going to be the case in some areas. So if you're a person who has a student, you need to look into that. That website I mentioned earlier, readyharris.gov, does have a link that tells you how they are doing school meal pickups and things like that. So keep your eyes open for that kind of information. If I hear any more news, obviously I'm going to tell y'all. That's what I do. So if you have any more questions, you can leave them in the description below. That's always an option. I'm happy to answer them. You can send them to me in a message. But if you need some more help with this, right? We're talking about people who are going through really hard times, dealing with unemployment, trying to figure out how to make ends meet. I am a financial coach. That is what I do. And so I would love to take a few minutes just to talk to you and help you figure out what your options are. I offer free discovery sessions. They're 15 minutes and we just have a quick chat. You don't have to, there's no requirement for you to pay anything. It's 15 minutes for us to just chat about what your options are and see if there's any way that I can help you, anywhere that I can point you to some opportunities and information that will help you. And if you're somebody who is not in financial trouble, to possibly have something that is more regular and ongoing to help you be in a position where you're not worried about your finances if this happens again. Okay, so if you're interested in talking to me, it's in the description below as well. You can go dobetterfinancial.com/free, and that'll take you directly to the website where you can find some time on the calendar. We can have a free 15-minute chat, and I can help you figure out exactly what it is that you need to do or what you can do going forward to put your family in a better position, so that if we have another one of these, you know, we're not all sitting around hoping that the government can save us, because in reality, they can't. They're trying, but they're finite, they're human, and they just can't. Facts. So for those of you who are out there, I just want to encourage you to stay positive, stay connected, continue to reach out to people. If you know somebody is struggling, if you've gotten one of these payments and you guys are great and you've both got jobs and you don't need this money, support someone. Support a small business, support a single mom, support one of our heroes. I'm sorry, that's the last thing on that round of 4. They're talking about trying to get into the Heroes Fund situation where they can actually give a bonus of sorts to people who are our frontline responders, our grocery store clerks, our nurses and doctors and police officers and things like that, the people who are essential right now. So that's another thing that they're trying to get on round 4. I'm not sure. Support those people as much as you can. If you get that stimulus money and you really don't need it right now, I can guarantee you there's someone who needs it. There are people in line. I beg of you. I got a story today that there are lines around the block to get food from the Houston Food Bank, right? There are people who are in desperate need right now. If you are one of those people and you don't know where to turn and you're not sure where to look, you can definitely, like I said, get one of those free discovery sessions. I'll get you as much information as I can and tell you where to go. If you're someone who's in the middle, you can use that discovery session so that we can figure out exactly what you can do with what you've got. And if you're somebody who has 0 impact on your income in this period, give me a call. We'll make sure it stays that way, okay? So dobetterfinancial.com/free is where you can get those sessions. This video is, I guess, number 6 in our stimulus package series. We're going to continue this as long as this goes on. Thank you so much for joining me today on Weeconomy Wednesday. My name is Christian Barnes, again, of Do Better Financial, and I hope you have an awesome week. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye-bye.